Hello! So I don't really have a place in the house that's really well suited to reading, so I tend to just read on my bed really. And today is going to be a graphic novel reading vlog, so a pretty short one. And so I'm kind of going to be in the awkward situation of being on my bed. So sorry about that, but don't really have a choice. So back in like summer, I think it was, of still this year. Yeah. Today is like the 30th, I think, so only 2 days left of 2021. And I read and did a reading vlog for the first volume of a graphic novel series called Monstress. I have the first one right here actually. And I am surprised at how well I liked it. I actually just checked out my review that I did for it, and I rated it higher than I expected. I rated it a 4.5 out of 5. So that kind of surprised me, because thinking back on it, I was like, I thought it was a little bit too complicated, so I was thinking maybe I gave it a 3.5 or a 4. So I probably need to reread this at some point because it's been a long time, but today I'm actually going to be reading volume 2. This is a series by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. This has been going since 2015. There's 6 volumes out. It's still ongoing. Generally, 1 volume comes out a year. So hopefully there'll be one for next year. I just kind of Googled it real quick and I didn't see that there's a title for volume 7 or anything yet. But a few months back, there was a sale on Book Depository where all the volumes were 33% off. So I decided to just get them all, because I mean, if only one comes out a year, then that's not too bad. Get them all and then only have to purchase one a year. That's not bad. So I have all of them set out right here. I'm gonna try, oh god, and show this. My cat is here. So we have volume 1 that I already showed, volume 2 that I'll be reading today, volume 3, Cat, volume 4, volume 5, and volume 6. And one thing I noticed is like volumes 1 and 5 are quite thick, and then like volume 2 really isn't compared to them. So the length of the volumes all kind of varies quite a bit, but hopefully this one will be as enjoyable as the first one. So since it's a graphic novel, obviously that's a little bit more difficult to do a reading vlog on, but essentially what I'm going to do is at the beginning of each chapter, I'll show you the title page art, if it's not a spoiler, and or if it's inappropriate, because there is some nudity in these. Like I think I had to skip one of the title pages of the first one, and I'll just kind of say my thoughts after each chapter. So the first one, like, this is a fantasy setting, and so one of the main aspects I remember is that it is kind of hard to follow along in the beginning because you don't really understand what the characters are talking about, as it's things that haven't really been explained to you yet. So I'm kind of interested to see how that goes in this volume. So let's get into it. Alright, so here is the cover page, and the chapter art for the first chapter in this one is this. So don't really have to show that. But there's this on the inside cover here, and I just think it's gorgeous. Like, the art in this is by far my favorite part, and even if I didn't like the story, I honestly probably would still collect it just for the art. Like, for example, there's a manga that only has 3 volumes, so it was never finished, but the art is so gorgeous, I still ended up getting them. I don't know, I'm really a sucker for gorgeous art, so things like this they get me. So I just finished what is chapter 7, or the first chapter in this book. This is the cover of chapter 8. And turn this back around. So the character designs in this are just as great as I remember. There are so many different types of creatures, like there isn't just humans. There are characters that are like the Hrothgar in Final Fantasy XIV, if you know what that is. They're essentially like lion people or tiger people kind of thing. There are like these cat mages, there are foxes, like they're just all really cool and interesting. But this is quite a brutal graphic novel. Like, this is kind of in the middle of a war, and you're really seeing the brutalities of that. So this chapter didn't have like any gore or anything like that, but you saw people starving, you saw what happened to some prisoners and things like that, or people that betray. And so it's a bit unexpectedly brutal. There's also a lot more unnecessary cursing in this chapter. Some of it just really seemed out of place for the characters that were speaking. So I'd say the opening of this volume is just okay so far. I had forgotten that at the end of each chapter you kind of get an info dump by like this cat professor called Professor Tam Tam. It's pretty interesting. I'll show the page actually. So we get like all this text as kind of like an info dump, world building type thing that has to do with what the previous chapter was about kind of deal. And I do appreciate that, but it's quite a lot all at once. But I did find that this chapter in general wasn't as confusing as I expected, since it's been so long since I read the first volume. It was okay, and like the different groups and everything that are involved, it was pretty obvious who they are kind of thing. So going into this next chapter, I'm actually feeling better than I thought I was going to. So the cover for chapter 9 is super cute, as you can see, which is a bit interesting considering what just happened in the story. But these two are companions of the main character, and this is just a child, and this is what's called a Necomancer. It's some of the cat mages in this. It's actually quite interesting. So I really enjoyed this chapter. They're like on a boat on the sea, headed towards this island, and just the discussions that were happening and the characters interacting with each other and everything. It was just really nice, and I'll try and show an example here without showing too much. Oh, also, instead of the regular thing at the end, this was the end of this chapter, where it kind of explains some of the creatures in here, but it's like a propaganda kind of poster against them. And I thought this was really interesting. I really like that they use this as ways to kind of give more information without having to have characters just kind of do an info dump on others. Alright, so I'm gonna put this to the side for a second and just try and show this panel. So this is kind of how they're interacting, and it's quite humorous. And yeah, that's about it for this one. Heading into the next. Alright, I just have to show some of the gorgeous artwork in this again. Like, gosh, I love this so much. And then there's just a little tiny monkey thing. It's so crazy how there's just like all this detailed art, and then tiny little cotton ball. Another chapter down, and another beautiful cover. Like, this is just so pretty. Like, look at that outfit. So this previous chapter, like, each one is more interesting than the previous one, and I am just honestly really intrigued by this, and I'm just really looking forward to continue reading it. Like, there's been a lot of action, it's just a lot of intrigue, the characters are fantastic, and like, I mean, just look at this. Like, I just want to keep going. And hello again! I'm now in chapter 11. There are 12 chapters total. Well, I don't want to say in this volume because it's chapters 7 through 12 in this volume. There we go. And I just love this. I really wasn't expecting to enjoy it this much, and the tension is really good. The creep factor, like, there are some pretty creepy scenes and panels, and oh my gosh. I really like where the story is going, and I actually think I like this better than the first volume, even though they're probably gonna have the same rating, just because this one, it's kind of ramping up into itself. Like the first chapter was just like okay, but then each one has been better than the last, so this will probably be like a 4.5 as well. But I think for the story aspect and what's being said in this volume, I do think I'd like that better in this one than the first one. And then here's the cover. And this is super similar to what the previous chapter was as well, but still gorgeous. And moving on. So I'm using another book to cover up this page because spoilers, and this is the last chapter in this volume. Gosh, I don't think I will ever get over the art in this. It is just way too good. So we're coming up in the culmination of this little story arc in here, and we found out quite a bit of information about the main character here herself, and like the demon thing in her. These two characters, even though this is a different book, are still around, still awesome. They're some of the best side characters. I'm really enjoying their interactions. And let's dive into the last chapter. Oh, alright. Just finished volume 2 of Monstress. 4.5 out of 5 stars, just because the beginning was a little bit slow, getting into it and everything. Ended in a really good spot, to be continued, and I think I'm definitely going to be reading the other volumes a lot quicker than at the time between this first and second one. It's literally been like 6 months since I read the first one. I really thought that I would have a bit of issue since it's been so long since I read the first one, but that actually wasn't the case. I feel like that things were kind of summarized enough and you're able to catch on pretty quickly just from the conversations between the characters and stuff. So that actually wasn't really an issue at all. I really would recommend this to anyone that kind of likes fantasy, elements of horror in their graphic novels, because like, oh man, this is just so good. Like, it's just really exceeding my expectations. I know I keep saying it over and over, but the art is just so fantastic. I love that it's in full color, and the story itself, although it does seem familiar, is fresh enough where I feel invested in the characters and I want to keep learning more about them and their journey and this sort of like war adventure kind of thing that they're on. And yeah, I definitely recommend this to anyone who likes kind of the steampunk kind of style, fantasy, horror, and you do have to be okay with some gore and kind of like elements of war and cursing, because there's quite a lot of that in here, but oh my gosh, just so good. But thank you for hanging out with me while I read that. This format is kind of a bit weird just because I don't really have a good space to set up to read these, but I like sharing the art with you guys just because I can't get enough of it, and I apparently will never shut up about it. But until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.